In this video, you're going to hear the story of a worship leader. Her name's Crystal Graber, and she tells us of the journey she's been on in the past year building a worship ministry from scratch. Crystal had zero prior experience leading and building a worship band, but she joined our Worship Accelerator program at Worship Ministry School, and you're going to hear about her journey of really not knowing even where to begin when it comes to building a worship ministry. But once our coaches were able to come alongside her, help her put a plan in place, she was able to assemble the puzzle, so to speak, and now she has a growing and thriving worship ministry at their brand new church plant. So without further ado, here is Crystal's story, and if you want to join Worship Ministry School, just click the link below this video where you can chat with one of our coaches for a free strategy session.
It's good to see you, Crystal, as one of our students who've been through Worship Ministry School and somebody that we've been on lots of good checkpoint calls and walked through a journey with you in your process of growing as a leader. We kind of wanted to spend some more time and just hear more about your experience. And so I'd love for you to just start out by telling listeners, viewers, really who you are. I mean, give us a little bit about your background. What's your family situation? What do you do for work? What's your role at the church? Those kinds of things. Fill our people in.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, I am one of many, I feel, and I am a baker. I own my own bakery. It's actually just me now. I started it with my sister. And so it's just me and my mom. We kind of do it together when she can help me with my girls. I have two girls. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And my role at the church. We just started this church, actually. This church is called Acts 2020 Church, from the book Acts of the Bible, chapter 20, verse 20. So it says something about, what's it called? Publicly and house to house. And so that was my father-in-law's vision for this church and what kind of God gave him. And so that's why we have our public meeting at our church location, and then we have house to house, which is our house churches, and then we go out and what we're all called to do as, the big C church, to go out and spread the gospel of all nations. So I think that's really exciting, and I was super excited about it when he told us about it. I remember when I was younger being called to worship and being called to being a leader. I didn't know when that was gonna happen. And so basically I travel a lot because I was in school. Then I married a Marine. And so we were down in South Carolina, Hawaii, other places. And so I joined several different churches, was on their worship teams, basically, and did piano and vocals, mainly vocals, at my last church, which I grew a lot and learned more of the leadership side just by watching, basically. I was kind of hurt a little bit by that church, but I understood because they were such a larger scale that they were very much perfectionists. And so, so I just kind of watched them. And I think that was just God telling me, hey, you just need to watch for a second and look how they run things, because you're going to be doing this exact same thing. And lo and behold, I am. And so my father-in-law was like, okay, hey, I want you to be the worship leader. And I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I know how to play piano and I know how to sing. That's about it. And so I was praying to God a lot about like, okay, what am I supposed to do? I started listening to like a worship podcast. I couldn't tell you the name of the podcast right now. I don't remember. But anyways, and then randomly I was looking through Facebook and Jake's post popped up, and it was like, do you want to be like the best worship leader that you can be? Basically, you know, his whole spiel. And I was like, yes, to all of those things. And I sat down for like 3 hours going through his very first, you know, intro thing, writing down all the questions. And I was like, okay, this is what I need. Like, God is clearly showing me like, these people, I need them in my life right now. Yeah. And so then I became basically everything for the church besides the pastor. So,
So you had your bakery, you had your full-time bakery operation, you know, running the day to day. And then your father-in-law really was the one who came to you and said, I want you to be the worship leader for this new church plant. Is that correct?
yeah. We had talked about it before, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had you thought when you were doing the bakery business, had you thought to yourself that you wanted to move into a position of being a worship leader somewhere?
Yes. Yeah, that's always been kind of like I knew it was my calling. And I just, like I said, I didn't know when that was going to be fulfilled, because all the other churches, they all had worship leaders. They all had, you know, their other leaders. And I just always felt like I wasn't good enough at those churches. And so, yeah.
So what was the biggest, you call it like a fear factor, when your father-in-law kind of said, okay, we're planting this church and I want you to be the person? What do you think was kind of the primary thing that was scary about that situation?
Everything. Basically, just like singing in front of people and just being up there alone on keys and leading a congregation. I know one thing that really scared me was after I listened to Jake's little intro video to the school about being a worship pastor. And I was like, yeah, this is maybe not for me. I'm not a pastor. Nope. But after watching the videos and going through it, it's okay. And God has definitely challenged me and equipped me very much so with words and everything, basically.
Yeah. So walk me through, I mean, after you had kind of found worship ministry school and you're thinking about, man, this feels like a really good resource or thing that maybe would benefit you in that current season of starting a church plant. Because if I'm correct, you guys didn't have the church at that point. You guys were kind of in the dreaming phases or the pre-launch phase, if you would call it that.
Yes. Yeah, it was like a month before we started.
Okay. So what were some of your initial thoughts of, like, I mean, even just preliminary goals before you got in, of thinking, if I can get this thing, Churchfront Worship Ministry School, to do this for me or with me, what was kind of your hope in that?
My hope was to become a better leader, to know how to lead other band members / my worship team, and to know all of the electronic side or the tech side. I knew nothing about that, and all we had was a 10-channel analog board And I was like, yeah, I know for a fact that's probably not going to cut it. I mean, we were already using 5 plugins from that. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so that was basically my very first thought was I need help leading people, knowing how basically to plan the songs and what type of songs we should be doing, and yeah, setting up all of the tech stuff. That was like my milestone that I can now say that I completed,
That's
which
right.
was awesome.
What was kind of maybe a more clarifying question too, what was the thing standing in your way of learning those things on your own? You felt that gap in your own tool belt of what you came and brought to the table as a leader. What was kind of standing in your way of figuring those things out?
Well, so at my other church, I had talked to the tech person there and the worship leader, and they just weren't, they're like, oh yeah, Crystal, like if you have any questions, you know, you can always feel free to contact me. Well, I've contacted them and they never got back to me. And whenever I was with them, it felt that they couldn't give me the time of day. And so I had no resources to know how to, you know, set up a church or anything like that. And I just felt out of loss. And I was just like, I don't know how to do any of this. And I need to figure it out soon, like very, very soon. You know,
Yep.
my passion for this church, and well, I should say my developed passion for this church, is to set up the church for success. You know, like I want this church to thrive for God's people, you know, not for me, not for, you know, my father-in-law, you know, for his self-esteem or whatever, you know, like I want God's people to have an encounter with Jesus and to get filled up and then go spread the gospel, because that is what we're called to do, you know?
So when you got into those conversations with your father-in-law, what was he asking you to do? I mean, to be the worship leader, but what were some of the things that he was saying, I want you to be in charge of this?
He never actually said that. He never said, I want you to be in charge of this. I just looked at other churches. I'm like, hey, they have that. We need it. You know, this would help us that they have, and we need that. You know, basically, he's not a planner, which God works through that amazingly, but I am very much like, hey, I need to know what's going on, and I need a system. Like Planning Center was like my first, I think it was the very first thing that I did, even through your guys' program, was set up Planning Center, make sure I have all my song bases, I have all my lyric sheets, I have, you know, a plan of how to execute that. And it was like, because I've dealt with Planning Center the past 3 churches that I was at. So I was very familiar, and I was like, this is an amazing tool. Like, I have to have this. And so I was basically bringing all of this electronic stuff. Like he was just expecting me to stand up there with a hymnal, a cappella, and just sing. I'm like, I don't think so. Like that's great and all, but I want people to actually get into worship and have a legit worship experience. And so that's when we started getting a huge TV and getting better sound equipment, getting all of that, and having a better experience in general.
Yeah.
So I was basically the one kind of pushing him and saying, hey, these are the tools that we need. Let's go out and buy them and let's get it done. Because if we're going to be a real church, then we need to be a real church and look like a real church, not this thrown together, hey, let's sing a couple tunes and then talk about Jesus. Like, I don't know. If people are going to come to our church, I want them to come and like it and not been like, oh, well, this is just kind of a joke, type of.
With family, it's a little tricky, but I mean, did you feel like you had support from, I would say leadership, but it's really your father-in-law is the lead pastor. I mean, did you feel like he was encouraging you to say, yeah, if you have a vision, like make it happen kind of approach?
Yeah, definitely. He's supported me. Like whenever I came to him with a problem, I'm like, hey, like maybe we need to start thinking about this. And it's really cool. It actually has brought me and my father-in-law closer together, because before he's a very big businessman, and always kind of intimidated me. So I never really talked to him that much, but now we talk a lot, and, I kind of feel important now to him because he, comes to me and says, hey, Crystal, like, what do you think about this? Or like, we always collaborate on, what do you think we need to be working on? Or because he has so much other stuff on his plate. It's kind of ridiculous, but but I'm like me and my mother-in-law are like the ones that are like, okay, this is the things that we need for our church. Like, this is the groups that we need to create. And these are, types of things that we should be doing, basically.
Yeah, that's sweet that you get to spend a season with family doing that, and you guys are kind of making the vision come to fruition, if I'm understanding that correctly. Like your father-in-law kind of has this big picture that he wants to see, and then you guys fill in the lines of how you're going to get there. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
Very cool. Tell me about the initial kind of experience when you got the opportunity to chat with our team before you even joined. I mean, when you kind of got on the phone and were able to talk to a coach, and if I remember correctly, you talked with Jake, and you got to hear a little bit about the program. What were some of your initial thoughts as you were sitting on the phone with him and hearing more about it?
So I actually, which this was probably the best thing that I did, was I sat down with my father-in-law, and we were both like kind of on a conference call with Jake. And everything that he was talking about, I'm like, yes, I need that. Like, can we just start now? Type of thing. And my father-in-law, like, he's not into all that. He never was into all that. Like, he's from a Mennonite church background. Like, that's where he actually started his pastoral role. Was at, but he wanted more, and that's why he left. And he knew that there was more out there than just what they were doing. Like, they didn't want to change. They didn't, it's another story. Anyways. And so, so he didn't really get a whole lot. He didn't think a lot of things was necessary. He didn't see that picture, just because he's not in that. And he's like, well, Crystal, like, if this is going to help you, and if this is what you really need, I was like, yep, it is. And he's like, okay, like, I'll support you in it. And it's been the best thing ever, because we've now have all the things that we have now because of the school. So that was really cool.
Got it. So he was pretty supportive, which made the onboarding process pretty easy. Tell me about your experience in the growth plan. Like, give maybe some reflections as you think back to where you were in the beginning. What was that coming into the program, getting that first coaching call where we kind of strategized a plan for you? What was that like, and what are some thoughts from that time?
So that was a really cool. To be honest, I was really nervous because I was like, oh gosh, like I don't know what to expect. First, like I've never even done Zoom before, so that was my very first Zoom meeting. Like everything was all new, and I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. But it was really awesome, and it after our first call, it just kind of put me at ease, you know. And I was like, okay, like we can get through this. And I'm a very like, if I don't know something, I will ask you. And I'm sure you know that. um, so it was really cool. Just kind of, I had kind of my dream of what I want my team to be like, and I want the worship to be like, and you guys kind of helped me solidify all those thoughts and kind of break them down into, hey, let's focus on this first. And because I'm just a scatterbrain and I just want to do everything all at once. And you're like, no, like that's just one at a time. And so we just work on things one at a time, and it was really cool.
Did your growth plan stay the same? Did you kind of walk exactly through it throughout your entire process, or did you have to course correct a little bit?
I think it was about the same. I know we worked on a lot of things, but I'm pretty sure we hit everything that I wanted to hit in there. I know it was planning center, getting that all set up, which that was my first thing. I jumped on that, did all that, got it all set up. And then, man, I should have had that printed out so I could remember.
No, totally fine. I mean, when you, especially with planning center, something like planning center is probably a good example. Did you feel equipped with the resource that was there? I mean, what questions did you come to that experience with? And then how did you feel, or what did you come out of that course kind of knowing?
Yeah. So all the videos from this worship ministry school is all step by step, which is so super nice. And starting planning center, I mean, it even showed me, so I just got an Apple MacBook Air. Just, I mean, really kind of for the course, because I knew you guys were dealing with Apple, but I also personally wanted an Apple. And so it showed me how to download it, how to navigate through Apple, because I'm brand new to Apple as well. Like everything was just really new to me. And so it was just really encouraging how everything was step by step. And once I watched all the videos, I took notes, what everything means, how to do everything, and then I just went and did it. And I know I had a couple questions, but everything was very self-explanatory. And then I went through, I'm pretty sure I went through like the pastoral videos, which those were super informational. Like I took hours going through those videos and just writing down everything and how to, do the gospel framework within your worship songs and within your even whole church, how your church is laid out, and everything was just so thought out and so not necessarily like too smart for me, but like, yes, he was using big words, but I could still understand what he was talking about. And I don't have a whole lot of, the Bible knowledge and everything like that, but I knew exactly what he was talking about. And if I didn't, then I went and looked it up in the Bible, and it was all very scriptural, which I loved. Like, you guys are spot on. So I really appreciate that. I mean, that goes through for all of your videos as well. They're all just very thought out, like, okay, if this person, I'm not calling myself an idiot and I'm not calling anyone else an idiot, but like anyone can do these videos. Anyone can set up the X32 because you guys have laid it out that way. And it's so helpful. And it's just really nice to come from knowing no tech stuff to understanding all the terms. Like you even go through all the terms that you say and that we have to do. And I even, taught my husband how to do it because he's now our tech team leader because that's all we have right now.
When you're in the family, that's what happens.
Yeah.
So when you're taking these courses, I mean, let me ask you this. Did you take everything that we did and just immediately copy and paste it over? Or how did you maybe adapt some of the things that, are in the courses for your current context? I mean, as a church plant and as somebody who's doing kind of these house churches and those kind of meetings, like how have you taken what you've learned, whether it's through just the board setup or, even the pastoral pieces, and really implemented it in a way that fits Acts 2020?
I know for an example, like the X32, you guys dealt with, I can't remember,
M32, yeah.
M32. So with that, it was a little bit tricky just because it's just laid out differently a little bit from the X32. And so we kind of had to navigate and been like, okay, so he does this there. Like we just had to pull out our manual basically and find it on our X32, and then everything was fine. So a lot of it also was using the Facebook group, which was, I know, Luke, you kind of kept pressing that on me, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I didn't necessarily love posting all my questions, but then once I got into the group, I'm like, everyone's super helpful, and I love it so much. And I think that was another tool that I also used trying to figure out my personal Acts 2020 problems and trying to navigate through those certain things, and even like back to planning center, trying to set up like the groups and all that. I mean, I just basically used what I knew with planning center from you guys, and then I also reached out to the planning center people too. So I mean, that's kind of how I took that approach. I answered your question.
So even out of this experience, it sounds like you've kind of learned a troubleshooting or problem solving approach that maybe you didn't have before. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you feel more equipped to navigate some of those things? Because ministry is always troubleshooting, right? We're always learning new things. We're always integrating different strategies depending on what time we're in or the people that we're ministering to. I mean, what is your mindset now when it comes to problem solving, troubleshooting, growing, those kinds of things?
So troubleshooting, I basically go from what I know and, okay, this has worked here. So if I'm still struggling with that, then I go back to that video and be like, okay, that's how they did it. Now, how can we apply that to our situation? And how do we move forward? Basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
The other question I wanted to ask you was, what was a mindset shift in ministry or in leadership that you kind of made or lived more into after you'd been through some of the content in the course library? What was maybe something that you said, oh, that's really going to change how I lead as a worship leader?
Yeah, I would say definitely the gospel framework. Before at all my other churches, I didn't really know how they planned their songs in what order, but I always knew like the high energy songs were always the first ones, and then you just kind of go down further into like the deeper spiritual songs. But after talking and after going through this course, I understand that that's not always the case. That's not always, you are leading someone through the gospel framework. You are leading, you are recognizing God, that he is holy, and he is why he's God, basically, and then you understand that he loves us and that he cares for us enough to come down the cross, and then it's just like the redemption and just praising him for taking death for us, and so that we can be one with him later. And so that's why we worship him. We were made to worship him, and he created all this for us, and there has to be like a rhyme or reason to this, and reminding people that's why we worship, that's why we're singing these songs, that's why we're singing these words, is super important. And going from seeing how I led or how I did songs just like randomly, and people were like, okay, whatever, but we started doing the gospel framework, and seeing how people responded, like once you got past the first song or whatever, like they were into it, and it was so much fun just to all experience God together, and just how much it touched me at times where I couldn't even talk or sing. I was just like, well, this is just happening. But it was just really cool. I'm sorry, Luke. Remind me of the question again. I think I got off track.
Yeah, you answered it. That was a good response. Yeah, because you already, I remember when you got into the program and there was this desire to know maybe more of how should I approach planning? How should I approach figuring out what songs to do week to week and with my team, and it being a church plant, you're unsure of really who you're gonna be playing with, or maybe it's a smaller band and different instrumentalists week to week, or maybe not ideal instrumental situations where you've got maybe too much of one thing and not enough of another, and your kind of thoughts or questions at that season were, what do I do? How do I plan accordingly? And I love that the confidence is really evident in you feeling really equipped to navigate planning regardless of your instrumental situation, not throwing it out completely, but just knowing that the framework helps keep you stable. It really helps ground you in something that's bigger than who's playing electric that week, or who's on drums, or who's singing with you. You're able to really stay in a good, I would call it a routine, but it probably is not. I don't want it to have that negative connotation of like mundaneness, because I think it is just a good grounding system to work through. And we didn't create that. That's a Constance Cherry wrote a book called the four. Maybe it's called the Gospel Framework. No, it's called the Gospel Architect, or the Worship Architect. I got to remember these things. So that's, we attribute where credit is due, obviously, but I'm super glad that it was helpful in that process, because I already hear so much confidence in just how you just described it to people that, I think talked to us 5 months ago, and the Crystal 5 months ago wasn't really sure of that and didn't feel that clarity around how to navigate some of that. So that's awesome to hear. What are, maybe now paint people a picture of, your church plant, Acts 2020, it launched and things were up and running, and we were together in that season where it was kind of the first couple weeks of services were happening, and we were talking about them, we were navigating them. So, moving from nothing to something, and then now where you are. I mean, what does your ministry look like right now? Give us kind of a description of, team members and volunteers and musicians, and what maybe even gear and strategies that you're using. Maybe not specific gear, but you can talk about, you already mentioned the X32 and maybe other pieces of, strategy that you're using to really aid you in this process of being a church plant and leading worship.
Yeah, so basically, to paint you a picture, to start out, it was just me up there with a microphone and the keyboard, and I had to print out all the songs, all the lyric sheets, and basically make like a lyric sheet book of the songs that we were doing that week. And everyone, like, I just handed it out beforehand, and everyone just kind of read off their sheets, and it was very uncomfortable because people like didn't know exactly the order of the song. Like, obviously I had, verse 1 bridge or chorus bridge, whatever, however the songs go, but I didn't have them exactly in the order. So everyone was like, well, where is she going next? Like, just like really in their paper, and it was just singing, and there was not.
So if I understand correctly, people have a Word document stapled together with a couple lyric sheets together, and they're probably looking down when you guys are like doing songs. So all the voices are going to the floor, and and you're up there leading on the piano with your microphone. Okay, I think I've got a good picture.
Yeah, it was rough because we didn't have a TV at that point. I had no idea how to run ProPresenter. And it was just all things that I still had to figure out, and we had to get all the gear for, and everything took a little longer. But to now, we have a guitarist, and he's now learning electric guitar leads, which is exciting. And we have another vocalist, and we actually have a drummer playing.
Very cool.
We got a really nice Rollins electric drum set. That was really cool. And we also have, I mentioned the X32, and navigating all that and setting that all up was all due to this wonderful school. And ProPresenter, we finally purchased a larger computer, another Mac that's way bigger processing.
That's right, because I think you guys were running the MacBook Air when you guys first got started. You guys were running the MacBook Air doing ProPresenter. It was kind of the ProPresenter machine as well as your everyday work machine. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you got another machine to run ProPresenter at that point?
Yep, because we couldn't do any motion graphics because my computer was just so slow, and then it was just behind. And so we finally got a new computer, which was really awesome. And we mounted everything up on the walls. So now it's not a rolling cart of TV anymore. It's actually up there, and it looks nice. And we have the speakers mounted beside the TV, and we actually look like a real church now, which is really exciting.
It's really cool. Talk to me about, and then now, I don't know about where you guys are at in terms of, the pandemic and how that impacted you guys, but from what I remember, or at least towards the end of your program, you guys did have some video recording happening. Is that right?
Yeah. That was one thing I really didn't want to get into. I knew it was a huge deal, like, to get, the live recordings, and we're like, well, we'll just we'll just record us on Wednesday and then just show it on Sunday, basically, type of thing. And then we So we did that for, I think, a month and a half or 2 months. We were just recording ahead of time and doing it on YouTube. But now we are in the season of, we have a Facebook page, and people are asking for, if we're going to do Facebook Live, and we started doing that just on a phone, not, anything professional. I actually had the very first Sunday ever since February off for my birthday last weekend. And I, set up my team. My sister-in-law led worship. She did awesome. Everyone did awesome. I really tried my best to set them up for success, for me not being there the first Sunday, which was a little scary for me, not for them, because I knew that they would do well. But I watched them on the Facebook Live. And so to give you, everyone else, a kind of a picture, we're in this huge gym setting, and our sound quality in the gym is still not the best. That's another thing that we are working on, is trying to get the acoustics to where you can actually, the echo's not that bad. But I don't know if it was where the camera was set up on Sunday, but we couldn't hear anything. Like, I could not hear the pastor preaching. I could barely make out any words just because the echo was so bad. The music sounded good because it's slower words and you could make out what they were saying. But once someone started talking fast, it was like, nope, I don't know what you're saying. So that is a beast that I actually went back into worship ministry school, and now am starting to open up that beast, and I will conquer it soon, hopefully. But so we're going to start going live soon. So I have to now navigate all that, which is my new project.
I think you'll do just fine. I think
Yeah.
of all the goals that you were able to accomplish in your time with worship ministry school, I think navigating doing live stream will be something that you probably do really well. And it, all the tools are there, and you've got a lot of the resources there already, the pieces of gear that you would need to make that happen. So I'm pretty confident that you'll be in good shape. Does when it comes to, I love what you said about having the Sunday off, because not a lot of church planters and people who are doing a church plant get to take weekends off ever. It's a pretty rare thing. So talk to me about what you did to prepare your team for being gone. How did you set them up?
So honestly, it was a surprise weekend that my best friend and my husband set up for me. And I didn't even know I wasn't going to be back for Sunday until a week before. So I was like, oh my word, what? I don't know how to do this, basically. And my sister-in-law, she has led vocally. She's never led on the piano before, within a band setting. So we set up Click and all that. We play with that almost every single week. We have a very experienced drummer, which is sent from God, to help us out. And she's like, well, I'm not really comfortable with playing with them. And I was like, well, like, that's okay. Like, I can just be back for worship. And she's like, no, I'm going to really try this week to play with Click and to, get it all together, basically. And it was kind of crazy because we had another event happening at our venue. And so we had to tear down on Wednesday, and then before I left, I set up everything. So everything was set, ready for them to go on Sunday morning. And we did rehearsal on Tuesday before I tore down everything. And so I I just talked to Audra. That was the girl that led. And I set up all the songs for her. I made sure she was comfortable with the songs. I set up all like the BPMs and everything for the click for her. I just made sure everything was set to go. And then I was at that rehearsal in case they had any questions, any tweaks to the song that I think maybe should go one way versus the other. I made sure Pro Presenter was all set up for them. That was another thing. So my husband was also going to be with me. He is the main and only person that runs the tech booth. So we had to get someone for that as well. And we finally found someone that was willing to come in during that practice, and he ran through that with them while I was taking care of the band and making sure they're fine. And then we typed out a big long like Word document of just step by step how to run everything in case something goes wrong, if they need to call us or anything. But everything ran so smoothly. They didn't need to call us or anything. It was such a nice weekend.
I love it. And it sounds like you have some pretty good and clear systems in place. I mean, the ability to type stuff out onto a document step by step, and the fact that you could just give people the BPMs, get their charts and tracks and all that stuff ready to go. And your husband was able to train somebody on the X32 in a night, and everything was fairly successful. That sounds like there's some pretty clear systems and procedures in place. Is that right?
Yes.
Very cool.
It's very nice.
I love it. It's super fun to think that a church plant that's normally less than a year old is normally scrambling during those moments where, for whatever reason, the worship leader has to be gone and nobody knows what to do. And the fact that you guys were able to take some time away to get some rest and recover, and then people made the worship experience happen no problem, is an awesome testament. So I only have really, one more question. I'd love to hear what is your vision now? What are you dreaming about for your worship ministry? What are you working on? What are some of the goals on your list at this point that you're kind of moving toward achieving, and what are you up to?
Yeah, basically, I just want to keep moving forward. I want to keep making worship easy and setup easy. And one thing that I'm kind of looking into is adding another monitor for the back wall for the worship team for lyrics. I know some people have been talking about, like in the Facebook I've seen, putting the chords on there. I'm still deciding on that, whether that would be a good thing or not. I'm not sure. And then setting up, like I said before, all the live streaming, getting all that plumbing, quote unquote, set up. And also, let's see, just getting sound quality better in the gym. Also, I have listened to your other podcasts, and the last one that I actually recently listened to was the one that you were talking with a Shane and Shane member with.
His name's Adam. Yeah, Adam Westlake.
Yes, Adam. And he was talking about his program, the worshipinitiative.com. And I've been really wanting to kind of implement that devotional time in with my team members, and just kind of making us a better team, like just to get to know one another more and just grow each one of us as a leader, as a worship leader, because we are all worship leaders, up there and leading people in worship and experience with God. And so I want them to be growing in their relationship with God. And I want them to be knowing like the reason why we're doing what we're doing. And so I think those just meeting like once a month or once every other month, just for that community time and growing time is what I kind of see for our worship team and just growing our members. And yeah,
I love it.
kind of what's going on right now.
What, if you were to talk to Crystal 5 months ago when you were thinking about worship ministry school in that kind of initial phase of not sure, what was going to happen, what would you say to Crystal 5 months ago?
I would say relax a little bit and everything's going to work out because you are going to do this school and it's going to be a game changer in your whole ministry and in your life. So that's what I would say. And everything that you are thinking about or you just don't even know yet, the answers will come. And you will have the people to rely on to answer those questions.
I love that. That's some good advice. Well, I appreciate you being on today and just kind of giving an insight to your experience. Such fun, kind of reminisce down memory lane, even if it was just a couple months ago. Really fun to hear your story. So I know it'll be encouraging to some folks out there who are in a similar season, who might be a part of a church plant and unsure where to look for help and what to do in that initial kind of startup phase. And so we want to make sure that people know the ways that they can get help. And we just so appreciate your time, even as a student who was going through the program. Such a fun experience to watch all the ways that you not only accomplished your goals, but just grew tremendously as a leader, as you've kind of alluded to, just the confidence and the clarity in knowing how to tackle issues when they come about, how to cast vision, how to lead your team, how to set them up for success and make scalable systems is really, really cool to think about a church plant being so young and already having all of that to offer to their teams, which is just so fun to hear about. So I really appreciate you being on and letting me ask you some questions, Crystal. It was super fun.
Yeah, it was very fun. Thanks for allowing me to.